Greetings travelers, and welcome to another Tempo Storm Wild Meta video, where we highlight decks and strategies you can use to become legendary on the Hearthstone Wild ladder. Opening hands in Hearthstone can have a lot of power to decide who wins the game, but deciding which cards to keep in the mulligan and which to send back can be a tricky skill to master. Mulligan strategy varies widely depending on what deck you're playing and what deck you expect your opponent to be playing, so it's vital to have a plan before you hit the ladder. Fortunately, the Tempo Storm Wild Meta team has you covered. In today's video, we're taking a quick and dirty look at mulligan strategies for Wild's top decks in the Descent of Dragons meta, so you can craft the best opening hands and improve your odds for success. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to our Tempo Storm Hearthstone YouTube channel to keep up to date with all our Hearthstone content. Now let's begin. Before we go into the particulars, let's go over some ground rules. In general, your mulligan strategy will depend on the type of deck you're playing, and in Hearthstone there are 4 major types of decks: aggro, mid-range, control, and combo. If you're playing an aggro or mid-range deck, you'll typically want to mulligan for curve, which ensures that you have plays to make in the first few turns of the game. If you're playing a control or combo deck, you'll want to mulligan for specific cards, either to bolster your defenses against aggro or to draw matchup-specific cards against other control and combo decks. Most decks will vary in how they play against each of these general categories of decks, as well as have nuances for specific matchups. This seems complicated, but most of the time it boils down to having a set of cards that you almost always keep, and other cards that you consider keeping only in specific matchups. Wild has a lot of variety in decks, but some decks are definitely more popular than others, especially at higher ranks. At rank 5 and above, you can usually expect a tier 1 or tier 2 deck, like the ones we've been showcasing here. Always check your opponent's class before you mulligan, so you can make an educated guess about what type of deck they are playing and adjust your mulligan accordingly. With that being said, let's take a closer look at how to decide your opening hand with the format's most powerful decks, starting with tier 1. As a secret mage, your goal is to take early control of the board and deal damage with your minions before finishing the opponent off with over-the-top burn. With this goal in mind, your priority is to find early game minions and a smooth curve. Always keep Mad Scientist, Arcanologist, and Cabal Lackey, and keep Current Tor Mage if you already have a 1 or 2 drop. Against control and combo classes like Warlocks and other mages, you can keep a Lunith since you expect the game to go long. Against aggro classes like Warrior and Rogue, you'll want to keep Arcane Flak Mage to keep the board clear. Reno Quest Mage is a Highlander deck that builds game-winning combos around the quest card Open the Way Gate. The quest starts in your opening hand and is the deck's ultimate win condition, so you'll want to keep it in almost every matchup. Only consider sending the quest back if you expect your opponent to be hyper-aggressive, and only when you're not on the coin. Besides the quest, you only want to keep the deck's high-powered Highlander cards like Reno Jackson, Reno the Relicologist, Zephrys the Great, and Kazakis, as well as early game minions like Mad Scientist, Violet Spellwing, and Babbling Book. If you're playing against aggro, you'll want to keep Doomsayer and Ray of Frost as well. Cube Warlock wants to manage the opponent's board with high-powered removal cards until it can build an overwhelming board of its own with Demons and Carnivorous Cube. Skull of the Manari is the deck's most powerful card to enable its combos, so it's the highest priority card to keep. You'll also keep Kobold Librarian, both of the eggs, Void Caller, and if you already have an egg, keep Evil Genius as well. If you're playing against aggro, you can keep Defile and Mistress of Mixtures, and against Paladin in particular, always keep Plague of Flames. If you have Void Caller, you can also consider keeping a big demon, especially Void Lord in any aggro matchup. Mech Handbuff Paladin is an aggro deck that functions almost like a combo deck, so instead of mulliganing for curve, you want to mulligan for specific combo pieces, so you can build an overwhelming board of mechs as quickly as possible. You only want to keep Crystology, Smuggler's Run, Grime Street Outfitter, Mech Warper, and Galvanizer, and send back everything else. This is always true regardless of the matchup. Moving on to tier 2, Pirate Warrior is an aggro deck that wants to hit the ground running, take over the board, and deal damage as quickly as possible. To make that happen, 1-drops like Sky Raider and N'Zoth's First Mate are your priority to find in the mulligan. If you already have a 1-drop, you can also keep Ankar, Bloodsail Cultist, Parachute Brigand, and Ship's Cannon. Also, it should go without saying, but even though Patches the Pirate is technically a 1-drop, never keep him in your opening hand. Galakrond Warrior is very similar to Pirate Warrior, since they both revolve around taking control of the game early with Warrior's Pirate package. 1-drops are your top priority, and if you already have one, you can keep Ankar, Ship's Cannon, and Parachute Brigand as well. Thanks to its upgraded hero power, Odd Paladin is able to consistently swarm with Silver Hand recruits starting on turn 2, so the priority for the mulligan is filling in the rest of the curve. Look for 1-drop minions, as well as the deck's powerhouse 3-drop drop Muster for Battle. If you already have those, you can also consider keeping buff cards like Never Surrender, Righteous Cause, and Warhorse Trainer, as well as Corridor Creeper. For Odd Rogue, the upgraded hero power is a consistent board control tool and source of damage that you'll almost always play on turn 2, so much like Odd Paladin, you want to look for cards to fill the rest of the curve. Again, 1-drop minions are a top priority to find, especially pirates to pull patches. If you already have a 1-drop, you can also keep some standalone 3-drops like South Sea Captain and Hench Clan Thug. Keep in mind, some 3-drops like SI7 Agent and Evil Miscreant have combo effects that require you to use the coin or a 1-drop to activate, so it's best to send these 3-drops back unless you're on the coin. Mecha'thun Warlock is a linear combo deck that aims to draw its entire deck and assemble a 1-turn kill. To accomplish this, its opening hand needs to help it draw cards and buy time against the opponent. You'll always keep Kobold Librarian, but the rest of the cards to keep will depend on the matchup. Against aggressive classes, always keep defensive cards like Defile, Dark Skies, and Mortal Coil, as well as Plague of Flames against Paladin specifically. Against slower classes, defense is not as big of a deal, so prioritize card draw like Novice Engineer and Loot Hoarder. Darkest Hour Warlock is another Warlock combo deck, only this time Warlock is using the combination of Darkest Hour and Blood Bloom to put a swarm of back-breaking minions in play as early as turn 4. Since you don't need to draw the entire deck, you just want to have the combo pieces as quickly as possible, so mulligan aggressively for them. In most matchups, you'll only keep Darkest Hour, Blood Bloom, and Rafam's Scheme. The only other cards to consider keeping are Defile against aggressive classes and Plague of Flames against Paladin in particular. Finally, even Shaman always has its discounted hero power to play starting on the first turn, so much like Odd Rogue and Odd Paladin, you'll use your mulligan to help fill the rest of the curve. Look for 2-drop minions and weapons like Totem Golem, Merkspark Eel, and Lickum. Against Warlocks and Mages, you can consider keeping Thing from Below to have a large body to deploy early and pressure the opponent quickly. Against Warlocks and Paladins, keep Devolve to answer their buffed minions, Death Rattles, and Taunts. And against Warriors and Rogues, keep Maelstrom Portal, Sandstorm Elemental, and Golaka Crawler in order to answer their early pirate. Altogether, these guidelines will help you mulligan with the major decks of the Wild format in the Descent of Dragons meta, and help you anticipate how your opponents mulligan when playing against them. For more details on the decks themselves, be sure to check out our Tempo Storm Wild Meta Snapshots. As always, also be sure that you're subscribed to the Tempo Storm Hearthstone YouTube channel to stay up to date with our Wild Hearthstone content. Thanks for watching.